Most enterprise AI programs do not fail because teams lack ideas. They fail because nobody decides which ideas deserve to become real projects. That creates wasted pilots, confused teams, and growing pressure on leaders who are expected to show results without creating more operational chaos. In this video, I will show you how to bring order to enterprise AI prioritization before your backlog turns into noise. You will see a practical way to separate curiosity, pilots, and real production candidates so your team can move with more clarity and less waste. Part 1. Why enterprise AI backlogs turn into junk drawers. In many organizations, the AI backlog starts with good intentions. Someone in operations wants to automate document review. A department head wants a chatbot. A technical lead wants to experiment with retrieval, copilots, or agents. An executive hears a vendor pitch and asks whether the company should be doing the same thing. None of those ideas are automatically bad. The problem is that they are usually collected in the same place, with no construction order. That is when the backlog stops being a decision tool and starts becoming a junk drawer. It fills up with ideas from meetings, conferences, hallway conversations, vendor demos, and internal enthusiasm. But very few of those ideas are described in a disciplined way. Most are missing the business problem, the workflow involved, the owner, the measurable gain, and the level of risk. So the backlog looks active while actually becoming less useful. A crowded backlog is not evidence of maturity. It is often evidence of weak decision discipline. When every idea is allowed to sit at the same level, the organization loses the ability to tell the difference between curiosity and commitment. That creates confusion for executives, frustration for project managers, and rework for technical teams. A better way to think about an AI backlog is as a decision filter, not an idea parking lot. The purpose is not to preserve every thought forever. The purpose is to make it easier to decide what deserves attention now, what deserves more investigation, and what should wait. Once you accept that, the backlog becomes smaller, but much more valuable. The first step in prioritization is not choosing a tool. It is cleaning up the thinking. If your backlog is full of vague requests, duplicated ideas, and vendor-driven excitement, your problem is not lack of innovation. Your problem is lack of structure. Part 2. The common mistake. Approving AI ideas before defining business value. One of the most common enterprise mistakes is approving AI work before defining the business value in a way that can survive real scrutiny. A team hears that a use case sounds promising, a demo looks impressive, someone says competitors are moving. So the project gets a green light before anyone has clearly answered a very basic question. What expensive, repetitive, slow, risky, or frustrating business problem are we actually solving? This matters because enterprise AI is not a science fair project. It competes for attention, budget, technical capacity, political goodwill, and leadership confidence. If a project starts without a clear value case, it becomes much harder to defend once delays, edge cases, data issues, or governance questions show up. The team then falls back on vague language like innovation, transformation, or strategic exploration. That may sound reasonable for a while, but it rarely survives pressure from serious stakeholders. If the business value is fuzzy at the start, the project will usually become unstable later. That instability spreads. Project managers struggle to define success. Department heads cannot explain why their teams should cooperate. Technical leads get pulled into building something that sounds interesting, but has no durable business anchor. Clear value does not mean the case has to be perfect. It means it has to be specific enough to guide decisions. For example, reduce review time by 30%. lower manual rekeying effort, improve response consistency, reduce the number of routine escalations, speed up document classification. Those are much stronger starting points than, "We think AI could help here." Before approving an AI proof of concept, require a short value statement written in plain language. What pain exists now? How often does it happen? Who owns the process? What would improve if this worked? That does not slow the organization down, it prevents it from moving fast in the wrong direction. Part 3. A practical way to separate experiments from real project candidates. One of the simplest ways to improve enterprise AI prioritization is to stop treating all ideas as though they belong in the same pipeline. They do not. Some ideas are just for learning. Some are worth a bounded pilot. A few are serious production candidates. If you mix those together, you create false expectations and unnecessary conflict. A practical structure is to create 3 buckets. The first is curiosity or learning. These are ideas that help the organization understand capabilities, limitations, tools, or patterns. They are useful, but they are not commitments. They should stay small, time-boxed, and inexpensive. The second bucket is bounded pilot candidates. These ideas solve a real problem, but the organization still needs evidence around data quality, workflow fit, user acceptance, or risk. The third bucket is production candidates. These have a defined business need, clear ownership, a plausible path to support, and enough readiness to justify formal delivery planning. This separation changes the conversation immediately. Curiosity work is no longer pretending to be a production roadmap. Pilot work is no longer sold as guaranteed scale. Production candidates are no longer buried under a pile of speculative experiments. This also protects relationships across roles. Executives can support learning without assuming every experiment becomes a funded initiative. Department heads can participate in pilots without promising organization-wide rollout. Technical teams can explore tools without accidentally creating support obligations for half-built systems. The biggest benefit is psychological clarity. Once people know which bucket an idea belongs in, they become more honest. They stop exaggerating readiness. They stop confusing exploration with commitment. That honesty is incredibly valuable because enterprise AI programs do not usually break from lack of imagination. They break when people quietly pretend a small test is already a serious project. Separate the buckets, and the organization starts thinking more clearly. Part 4. Why more AI ideas often lead to less actual progress. At first glance, a large number of AI ideas can look like momentum. Leaders may see enthusiasm. Teams may feel innovative. Vendors may reinforce the impression that the organization is moving aggressively. But in practice, more ideas often produce less progress, especially when the organization has weak gating and limited delivery discipline. Here is why. Every new idea creates decision overhead. Someone has to review it, clarify it, compare it, and determine whether it belongs anywhere near real implementation. If that process is weak, the organization accumulates a growing pile of partially defined opportunities. Teams become busy discussing possibilities instead of executing priorities. The visible activity goes up, while real throughput goes down. Volume is not the same thing as progress. A backlog with 100 undefined ideas is usually weaker than a backlog with 5 qualified opportunities and clear owners. The first creates noise, the second creates movement. This is especially important in Microsoft-centric enterprises where leaders are hearing about copilots, automation, workflow tools, cloud services, and custom application options at the same time. Without discipline, every category generates its own stream of requests. The result is not strategic choice, it is prioritization fatigue. A mature organization does not celebrate idea volume by itself. It celebrates decision quality. It knows how to say yes, not now, learn more, or no. It understands that every accepted initiative consumes attention from architecture, data, security, operations, governance, and delivery teams. That means accepting too much is not ambitious, it is often irresponsible. The contrarian truth is simple. If your AI idea count keeps climbing while delivery confidence keeps falling, your problem is not innovation capacity, your problem is backlog control. More ideas are only helpful when the organization has a reliable way to reduce them into a focused set of work that deserves to move forward. Part 5. Prioritization must happen before tool selection. Many organizations ask the tool question too early. They ask whether they should use Microsoft Copilot, Azure AI services, Power Platform, or a custom .NET application before they have clearly defined the problem. That creates a subtle but expensive distortion. The team begins evaluating technology categories before it has qualified the work itself. Good prioritization starts with 6 simpler questions. What problem are we solving? What workflow is involved? Who owns that workflow? What measurable gain matters? What level of risk is acceptable? And what would a real path to production look like? Those questions are more important than the tool debate because they shape the solution space before specific platforms enter the conversation. Tool choice should come after use case qualification, not before it. When organizations reverse that order, they start matching ideas to products instead of matching solutions to real operating needs. That is how teams end up with technically interesting projects that do not fit the workflow, the risk profile, or the support model. In a Microsoft environment, the temptation is understandable. The ecosystem is broad. There are many legitimate options. Some use cases may fit existing Microsoft 365 workflows. Others may fit Power Platform. Others may need custom .NET applications with deeper integration, stronger control, or specialized business logic. But none of those choices should be made from excitement alone. Prioritization before tool selection forces better thinking. It turns the conversation away from features and back toward operational reality. It makes leaders ask whether the work is repetitive enough, valuable enough, stable enough, and owned clearly enough to justify implementation. That is exactly where enterprise AI decisions should begin. A strong architecture process does not start by shopping for tools. It starts by defining work, value, ownership, and risk. Once those are clear, the technology options become easier to compare and much harder to misuse. Part 6. Random pilots create long-term support debt. One of the most dangerous habits in enterprise AI is allowing random pilots to multiply without thinking about their long-term operational consequences. A team tries one assistant here, one document workflow there, one search feature somewhere else. Each pilot looks small in isolation. But over time, these disconnected experiments create a hidden burden that the organization eventually has to carry. That burden is support debt. It shows up as undocumented logic, unclear ownership, inconsistent prompts, unmanaged access, weak logging, no escalation path, and lingering expectations from business users who assume the pilot is more durable than it really is. Even when a pilot is labeled experimental, people often remember the capability, not the warning label. Every pilot teaches the organization something. The question is whether it teaches discipline or teaches chaos. When pilots are launched without clear boundaries, teams learn that it is acceptable to create partially supported systems with uncertain futures. That is a bad lesson, and it spreads quickly. Support debt also creates political damage. Infrastructure teams become wary. Security teams become reactive. Project managers lose confidence in what is actually live, what is experimental, and what is abandoned. Leaders begin to feel that AI work generates activity without producing stable assets. Once that perception sets in, future proposals face more skepticism even when the next proposal is much better grounded. This is why bounded pilots matter. A bounded pilot has a scope, an owner, a review date, clear expectations, and an explicit decision about what happens next. It either graduates, gets revised, stays contained as a learning exercise, or ends. That is how you prevent experimentation from becoming operational clutter. Enterprise AI should create reusable capability, not a graveyard of half-supported tests. If your pilots do not have boundaries, they are not just teaching your teams about AI, they are teaching your organization to tolerate disorder, and that becomes very expensive later. Part 7. Create a simple AI project decision gate. The most practical next step for most organizations is to create a simple AI project decision gate. Not a giant governance manual, not a complex scoring bureaucracy, just a lightweight screen that forces every serious idea through the same core questions before it earns delivery attention. A useful starting gate can be built around 6 factors. First, workflow clarity. Is the process actually understood well enough to improve? Second, business value. Is there a meaningful gain in time, quality, consistency, cost, risk reduction, or service level? Third, data readiness. Is the required information available, accessible, and usable? Fourth, risk level. Are the consequences bounded, reviewable, and acceptable? Fifth, ownership. Is there a real business owner and a technical owner? Sixth, path to production. If this works, is there a believable route to support, operate, and maintain it? If an idea cannot survive those 6 questions, it does not deserve to become a priority yet. That does not mean it is a bad idea forever. It means it has not earned the next level of commitment. The power of a decision gate is consistency. It gives executives a cleaner portfolio view. It gives department heads a better way to frame requests. It gives project managers more stable starting conditions. It gives technical leads permission to ask disciplined questions before building anything. That consistency reduces noise and raises trust. Start simple. Use a one-page scorecard. Review it quickly. Require plain language answers. Do not let people hide behind buzzwords. The goal is not to make the process academic. The goal is to create a shared filter so the organization can move limited capacity toward the work that matters most. Prioritization is not glamorous, but it is foundational. When you build a simple decision gate, you are not just organizing ideas. You are teaching the enterprise how to think more clearly about AI before money, time, and credibility get wasted. Enterprise AI gets stronger when organizations stop collecting ideas and start qualifying them with discipline. The companies that move best are not the ones with the biggest backlogs. They are the ones with the clearest decisions. Explore more of my work at ain.net.com. Thanks for watching.